Zane Holt always said the universe was too big for one man to matter. That was before a silver-skinned alien girl called him handsome. The moment he saw her, everything changed. He was leaning against the railing of Port Andromeda's docking bay, sipping terrible recycled coffee and cursing the new assignment that had dragged him halfway across the spiral arm. Another engine tech job. Another long week fixing cargo ships that smelled like rust and regret. Then she walked in. Tall, graceful, and shining faintly under the station lights, she looked like something carved from moonlight. Her skin shimmered silver blue, her eyes glowed faintly violet, and when she spoke to the officer at the gate, her voice was smooth like music. Zane almost dropped his coffee. "Whoa," he muttered under his breath. "That's definitely not from Earth." "Excuse me," a soft voice said behind him, and he turned to see her standing there, closer now, smiling politely. "Are you the engineer they call Holt?" He blinked. Yeah, Zane Holt, that's me." She tilted her head slightly, studying him with those deep violet eyes. "Strange. I expected someone taller." Zane coughed. "And I expected someone with fewer hearts, but here we are." For a second she just stared at him. Then she laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. "I like you," she said. "Humans are amusing." "And you're terrifyingly gorgeous," he replied before he could stop himself. Her silver cheeks flushed faintly blue. "We will work well together." Her name was Karina, daughter of House Velieri, princess of the Kolthari Dominion, one of the most powerful empires in the Orion Spur. She was here on a diplomatic mission, she explained, and her ship's warp core was failing. The Kolthari had engineers of their own, of course, but they wanted a human perspective, whatever that meant. So Zane followed her through the corridors, trying not to stare too much. Her armor glinted like liquid metal, and she moved with the calm confidence of someone who could snap a man in half, but chose not to. "Do humans always talk so much when they are nervous?" she asked as they stepped aboard her ship. "Only the charming ones," he shot back. She smirked. "Then you must be very nervous." The Vestra Dawn was a marvel of alien engineering, elegant, curved corridors glowing with soft blue light, panels that responded to touch, and machinery that hummed with a deep, steady rhythm. Zane felt like he'd walked into the future. "This way," Karina said, leading him into the engine chamber. Whoa, he stopped dead. "This is beautiful." Most humans saw machines as tools. Zane saw them as living things. And the warp core in front of him, a pulsating crystal heart encased in silver conduits, was the most alive machine he'd ever seen. "It is dying," Karina said quietly, placing a hand on the humming surface. "And with it our mission." Zane knelt beside the control panel, scanning the readouts. "I can fix it," he said, confidence returning to his voice. "But I'll need time, and probably a lot of luck." "Time we have," she replied. "Luck perhaps not." They worked side by side for hours. At first, Karina observed silently, curious about the way he talked to the engine as if it could hear him. But soon she was handing him tools, translating alien schematics, even teasing him when he swore under his breath. "You curse like a Kolthari," she said once. "Is that a compliment?" "It means you are angry but determined. That is the only way to fix what is broken." By the time the engine hummed to life again, Zane was exhausted, sweaty, and grinning like a fool. Karina watched the stabilized core with quiet pride, then turned to him with a strange, soft expression. "You did it," she said. "You saved my ship." He said, wiping grease from his hands. "Just doing my job." "No," she replied, stepping closer. "You did more." For a long moment they just stood there, close enough that he could feel the faint warmth radiating from her skin. It was probably nothing. A moment of shared relief after a long day. But when her eyes met his, Zane felt his heartbeat trip over itself. "Maybe," he said, his voice a little unsteady, "you're not so terrifying after all." "And maybe," she said with a small smile, Humans are more than I expected." That night they shared a meal in the ship's observation deck, Kolthari cuisine for her, dehydrated station rations for him. The stars stretched endlessly outside the window, and for the first time in years, Zane felt like the universe wasn't so empty. "Do you miss your home?" she asked. "Earth sometimes," he admitted, "but space feels more like home now. It's infinite, full of surprises." "Like you," she murmured. He chuckled. "I'm not that surprising. You fixed a Kolthari warp core with nothing but human tools and instinct," she said. "You are more surprising than you know." Zane looked at her, and in that moment he realized something that scared him more than pirate ships or malfunctioning engines. He was falling for her. The mission was supposed to last 3 weeks. It stretched into 5, then 7. They traveled together, shared stories, faced small crises and strange encounters, and with each passing day, the distance between them grew smaller. Sometimes she would rest her hand on his forearm when she spoke, a Kolthari sign of closeness. Sometimes he would catch her watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. And sometimes, late at night, they would sit beneath the stars and talk about nothing at all. "Do you think humans and Kolthari could ever work?" he asked one night, his voice barely above a whisper. Karina's gaze lingered on the distant constellations. "We are very different," she said softly, "but difference is not weakness, it is possibility." Her words stayed with him long after she left the room. Zane still told himself it was just a mission, just a job, just a friendship with a strange, beautiful alien girl who made his heart race. But deep down, something was changing, something neither of them dared to name. And when Karina smiled at him across the control deck, stars reflecting in her violet eyes, he couldn't help but wonder. Maybe this was more than fate. Maybe this was the beginning of something impossible. Something wonderful. Something that could change the universe. It had been 3 weeks since Zane first met Karina, and the line between mission and something more was blurring with every passing day. They were no longer just engineer and client. They were partners in work, in laughter, and in something deeper they both felt but hadn't yet spoken aloud. "Hold still," Karina said one morning, leaning over him with surprising gentleness. They were in the cargo bay, repairing a damaged drone that had sparked wildly the night before. "You have a burn on your arm." "It's nothing," Zane muttered, trying to wave her off. She ignored him and placed a cool, glowing salve over the small wound. "Humans," she sighed softly, "so fragile and yet so stubborn." "And Kolthari," he countered, "so dramatic about everything." Her lips curved into a smile. "We are passionate, not dramatic." Their eyes met closer than either intended. For a moment the world was silent. Zane felt her warmth, her heartbeat, or was that his own? And something inside him ached to close the tiny space between them. But then the calm crackled, and the moment vanished like stardust. "Warning," the ship's AI announced. "Unidentified vessels approaching." They ran to the bridge together, adrenaline replacing their laughter. Out beyond the viewport, 3 ships slid out of warp, sharp, black, and unmistakably hostile. "Pirates," Karina said grimly. "Friendly pirates?" Zane asked, though he already knew the answer. "Not the friendly kind," she replied. "They want the diplomatic codes we carry. They will kill to get them." Zane's heart pounded. He wasn't a soldier, he fixed things. He built engines, not battle plans. But when Karina turned to him, eyes steady and calm, something inside him refused to back down. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. She handed him a toolkit. "Keep the shield generators online. If they fail, we're finished." For the next hour, chaos ruled the Vestra Dawn. Energy blasts shook the hull. Shields flared and flickered. Karina shouted commands in her native tongue while Zane crawled through access tunnels, patching circuits and rerouting power by sheer instinct. "You're doing it, Zane," she called through the comm. "Doing what?" "Keeping us alive." He grinned despite the sweat and danger. Guess I'm good at that. But the pirates were relentless. A boarding party cut through the ship's hull, and alarms blared as armed intruders stormed the corridors. Karina grabbed her spear staff, a weapon glowing with pale blue plasma. "Stay here," she ordered. "I will hold them off." "Like hell," Zane said, snatching up a plasma cutter. "I'm not hiding while you play hero." Her eyes softened. "You would risk your life." He swallowed. "I already am." They fought side by side in the narrow hallways, Karina moving like a dancer, her strikes precise and powerful, while Zane improvised with whatever tools he had, turning engineering gear into makeshift weapons. He was clumsy compared to her but determined, and somehow together they drove the boarders back. When the last pirate fell, panting and battered, they slumped against the bulkhead side by side. "You fight well," Karina said, wiping a streak of silver blood from her cheek. "Please," Zane panted. "I almost tripped over my own feet." She laughed, breathless and beautiful. "And yet you did not run." "Wouldn't dream of it," he said softly. Silence settled between them, broken only by the distant hum of the ship's recovering systems. Karina turned toward him, her expression unreadable. "Zane," she said quietly, "you are confusing." "Thanks. I have fought beside warriors who have trained for decades. I have stood with soldiers bred for battle, but none of them, none, ever made me feel the way you do." His chest tightened. "And how's that?" "Like I am not alone." The confession hung in the air like a fragile star. Zane's breath caught. He wanted to reach for her, to say something, anything, that would bridge the strange, wonderful distance between them. But before he could, the ship jolted, a final desperate blast from the retreating pirates, and they were thrown to the deck in a tangle of limbs and laughter. "Still think I'm confusing?" Zane teased as they struggled to stand. "Yes," she whispered, so close he could feel her breath. "But perhaps that is why I cannot stop thinking about you." Later, when the danger had passed and the stars were calm again, they stood together on the observation deck. The silence between them was no longer awkward. It was warm, comfortable, alive. Karina rested her hand on his arm, a small gesture, but one heavy with meaning. "The stars are vast," she murmured, "but I think they feel smaller with you beside me." Zane looked out at the infinite darkness and then back at her. "Funny," he said softly. "I was just thinking the same thing." The mission wasn't over. Danger still lurked ahead. But as the Vestra Dawn sailed into the unknown, one thing had become clear. This wasn't just a partnership anymore. It was something deeper, something brighter. Something that neither distance nor danger could break. The days after the pirate attack passed in a strange, beautiful blur. The Vestra Dawn sailed through deep space once more, her wounds repaired, her crew recovering, and somewhere between the stars and silence, something fragile began to grow between Zane and Karina. They didn't talk about it. They didn't have to. It was in the way she laughed more easily now, in the way he found excuses to stay near her, fixing things that didn't need fixing. It was in the way their conversation stretched late into the artificial night, long after duty had ended. Yet for every heartbeat they shared, a question hovered quietly between them. What were they to each other? One evening, Zane found Karina alone in the ship's arboretum, a small dome filled with alien plants glowing gently in the dark. She stood barefoot on the mossy floor, eyes turned toward the stars beyond the glass. "You always come here when you want to think," he said softly, stepping inside. She turned, a faint smile on her lips. "And you always find me." "I'm an engineer," he shrugged. "I fix things, even when I don't understand them." Karina's eyes softened. "And do you understand me, Zane Holt?" "Not even a little," he admitted, "but I'm trying." She chuckled, then sighed, her gaze drifting back to the stars. "We are almost home." "Home," he repeated, "as in your homeworld." She nodded. Velira, the heart of the Dominion, my mother waits there and my people. They will want answers. About us, he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. About everything, she said, her tone suddenly serious. The pirates were not chance. There are those who would see this mission fail. They fear what peace with humans might bring. Zane crossed the floor until he was beside her. And what do you think peace would bring? Her 3 hearts beat beneath silver skin, strong and steady. Hope, she whispered, but also change, and change is not always welcome. The journey to Velira was long, and the tension grew with every light year. Zane threw himself into work, repairing systems that didn't need repairs, checking and rechecking the warp core until Karina teased him for it. You're restless, she said one day, leaning against the engine room door. Maybe, he admitted. It's just, I keep thinking about what happens when we land. She tilted her head. And what do you think will happen? He hesitated. You'll go back to being a princess, and I'll go back to fixing ships, and whatever this is, he waved a hand between them. It'll fade. Karina stepped forward until she was standing inches from him. Do you wish it to fade? No, he said honestly. Then it will not. Her confidence stole the breath from his chest. You make it sound so simple. It is simple, she said gently. You care for me, I care for you. The stars do not decide our story, Zane Holt. We do. When Velira finally appeared on the view screen, Zane forgot how to breathe. The Kolthari homeworld was breathtaking, a vast sphere of oceans and floating cities, wrapped in a halo of shimmering light. It looked like a dream, beautiful and distant, and he couldn't help feeling like he didn't belong there. The docking bay was enormous, carved from crystal and alive with activity. Warriors bowed as Karina stepped off the ship, diplomats saluted, and everywhere eyes turned toward the human at her side. Don't trip, Zane muttered to himself. Whatever you do, don't trip. Karina heard him and laughed softly. You worry too much. Because I am worried, he hissed. Everyone's staring like I'm a bug in their soup. They stare, she said calmly, because no human has ever walked here before. That didn't make him feel better. They were led through towering halls to the heart of the palace, where Karina's mother, Empress Illyria, awaited. The Empress was taller, colder, and even more striking than her daughter, with eyes like polished amethyst and a gaze that pierced through him like a scanner. So, she said at last, voice deep and melodic, this is the human. His name is Zane, Karina said firmly. Zane bowed awkwardly. Hello, Your Majesty, big fan of your planet. A few nobles snickered. The Empress did not. My daughter speaks highly of you, but I must ask, why is a human engineer standing beside the heir of Velira? Karina's voice was steady, because he belongs there. The Empress raised an eyebrow. Does he? Zane swallowed hard. I don't know if I belong here, ma'am, but I know I'd do anything to protect her. I don't care about thrones or titles or politics. I just care about her. The hall went silent. Then, to his complete shock, the Empress smiled just a little. Honest, foolish, human, I see why she likes you. Karina's hand brushed against his, a small, secret gesture. I told you, she whispered, you surprised them. Later that night, as the palace quieted and the stars rose over Velira, Karina found Zane on a balcony overlooking the glowing city below. He was leaning on the railing, staring into the endless night sky. Do you regret coming? She asked softly. He shook his head. No, I just keep wondering how I ended up here. A month ago I was fixing fuel lines on cargo ships. Now I'm, whatever this is. She stepped beside him, their shoulders brushing. You are more than you think, Zane Holt. Yeah, he asked, smiling faintly. And what am I? My reason, she whispered. The stars blurred in his vision. He turned to her, heart pounding. Karina. But before he could speak, a flare of light streaked across the sky, a signal fire from the outer ring of the city. The palace alarm began to sound, low and urgent. Karina's smile faded. Something is wrong. Zane felt his pulse quicken. Pirates again. No, she said, her voice tight. Something worse. And just like that, the quiet moment vanished. Destiny, messy, dangerous, unstoppable, had come knocking again. But this time, Zane knew one thing for sure. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The alarm echoed through the palace halls, a deep, pulsing sound that turned celebration into chaos. Guards shouted commands in the Kolthari tongue, and distant explosions rumbled like thunder from the lower levels. Karina, Zane said, heart racing, what's happening? She touched the comm on her wrist, speaking quickly into it. Her usually calm voice trembled. Security breach. Multiple attackers. They're inside the palace. Attackers here. They would not dare, unless someone helped them. Her eyes darkened, and for the first time since he met her, Zane saw real fear there. Without another word, she grabbed a spear staff from the wall and tossed a compact plasma pistol toward him. Stay close to me. Close, he said, catching it clumsily. I'm not exactly trained for. Then learn fast, she said sharply, already moving. I will not lose you. The corridors of the palace were alive with chaos, guards clashing with masked intruders, sparks and smoke filling the air. Zane stayed at Karina's back, covering her as best he could. He wasn't a soldier, but he had quick hands, sharp eyes, and a knack for thinking under pressure. Left side, he shouted as one of the attackers flanked them. Karina spun and struck, her spear sweeping through the air in a graceful arc. The attacker dropped instantly. You see well, she said, for someone with only 2 eyes. Thanks, he panted, I try. They pushed forward, step by step, until they reached the great hall and froze. Dozens of hostiles filled the chamber, and in their center stood a tall figure in obsidian armor, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Zane felt Karina stiffen beside him. Varric, she hissed. The name sent a chill down Zane's spine. He'd heard it whispered before, a powerful noble from a rival house, infamous for his hatred of humans and his ambition to overthrow the throne. Karina, Varric said with mock courtesy, I see you brought your pet. Zane's blood boiled. Pet, that's cute. Do you treat all people you're scared of like that? Varric laughed, cold and sharp. I fear nothing human, least of all you. Then you're underestimating him, Karina said, stepping forward, her voice steady as steel. And me. Varric's smirk vanished. You shame your bloodline by standing beside that thing, but no matter. Once you're gone, I will claim the throne and the dominion will never kneel to earth. You'll have to go through me first, she said. Gladly. The hall erupted into battle. Karina moved like lightning, blocking and striking with impossible precision. Zane ducked behind a pillar, firing his pistol in short bursts to cover her. He wasn't the best shot, but every time one of the attackers tried to flank her, he was there, forcing them back. They fought side by side just like they had against the pirates. Only now it wasn't just survival, it was something deeper, something worth protecting. At one point, Karina stumbled, a blast grazing her arm. Zane rushed forward without thinking, tackling an attacker twice his size. They crashed to the floor, fists flying. Pain shot up his jaw as he was struck, but he refused to let go. Zane, Karina shouted. I'm fine, he yelled back, wrenching the weapon from the enemy's hands and hurling it aside. Mostly. She smiled, even in the middle of a fight. Finally, Varric stepped down from the dais, his spear crackling with dark energy. Enough games. Karina met his gaze. You're finished. No, he said coldly, you are. They clashed in the center of the hall, a blur of silver and black, sparks flying with every strike. Varric was powerful, but Karina was faster, stronger, driven by something deeper than ambition. Love, loyalty, and the stubborn refusal to give up. Still, Varric was relentless. He disarmed her with a vicious twist and raised his weapon for the final blow. And then a plasma shot rang out. Varric staggered back, roaring in pain. Zane stood behind him, pistol smoking, hands shaking. "Pick on someone with less of a death wish," he said. Karina seized the opening, spinning and driving her knee into Varric's chest. He crashed to the floor, defeated and furious. "It's over," she said. "For now," he spat, "but they will never accept a human among us." "We'll see about that," Zane muttered. The hall fell silent as guards dragged Varric and his followers away. Smoke hung heavy in the air, the scent of battle lingering. Zane leaned against a pillar, breathing hard. "Remind me never to vacation here." Karina walked toward him slowly, her silver skin streaked with sweat and ash. "You saved my life," she said softly. He shrugged. "You've saved mine enough times," seemed fair. But then she stepped closer, close enough for him to feel the warmth of her skin, to see the soft glow in her violet eyes. "No one has ever fought for me like that," she whispered. "Not even those sworn to protect me." "Yeah, well," he murmured, "I'm not sworn to anything." Her hand brushed his cheek. "Then why?" He met her gaze, heart racing. "Because I care about you, more than I should." For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then Karina leaned forward and pressed her forehead gently against his, a Kolthari gesture deeper than any kiss. "And I," she whispered, "care for you more than I ever thought I could." The alarms had faded. The palace was safe again. But something had changed, something bigger than rebellion, bigger than politics. They were no longer just partners. They were no longer just allies. They were something more. And as the stars rose above Velira that night, Zane knew one thing for certain. No matter what battles lay ahead, he would face them with her. Together. The palace was quiet again. The fires were gone, the rebels arrested, and Varric was sealed away in a high-security cell. Yet for all the calm outside, Zane's heart had never felt so loud. He lay awake that night in the guest chambers they had given him, staring at the carved ceiling of silver stone, his thoughts spinning like a ship without thrusters. The battle was over, but everything else was just beginning. She had said she cared for him, more than she thought possible. And he had almost told her the same. Almost. Morning came with soft golden light spilling through the balcony. Zane had just finished dressing when the door slid open without warning. "You do not lock your doors," Karina said with a teasing smile, stepping inside. "Guess I forgot," he said, "or maybe I was hoping you'd come by." Her cheeks flushed a faint blue. "Then I am glad I did." She wore ceremonial robes today, layers of deep violet and silver, a circlet resting gently on her brow. It made her look even more regal, more untouchable, and yet she was smiling just for him. "My mother has summoned us," she said. "There will be a council session. They will speak of the rebellion, of Varric, and of," she paused, her voice softer, "of us." Zane's stomach tightened. "Us." "Yes," she said. "They demand to know why the heir to the throne risked everything for a human, and they will expect answers." "Right," he muttered, "answers easy." Karina's gaze softened. "Are you afraid?" He tried to joke, terrified but only a little. She stepped closer and took his hand, her touch gentle and steady. "Do not fear them. I will stand beside you." "You always do," he said quietly. The council chamber was enormous, a circle of high seats carved from crystal, glowing faintly with ancient light. Dozens of Kolthari nobles were gathered, their faces unreadable as Karina and Zane entered side by side. Empress Illyria sat at the center, her expression calm but sharp. "Daughter," she said, her voice echoing, "you stand accused of defying tradition, of risking the throne, of forming an unapproved bond with a human." Zane's heart hammered. Bond. That word sounded heavier than he was ready for. Karina did not flinch. "I did what I believed was right. Varric sought to destroy peace. Zane fought to protect it." A murmur rippled through the chamber. One elder leaned forward. "A human should not be at the heart of our politics. They are short-lived. Impulsive, weak. Zane's hands clenched, but Karina spoke before he could. And yet this weak man saved my life twice. He saved this palace. He stood against assassins and pirates with nothing but courage. Tell me, Elder, how many of your guards would have done the same? The Elder's face darkened, but he said nothing. Another voice rose. Even if he is brave, he is still not one of us. Perhaps that is why he matters, Karina replied, her tone soft but firm. Because peace is not forged between those who are the same. It is forged between those who are different and choose each other anyway. The hall fell silent. Even the Empress's eyes softened slightly. Finally she turned to Zane. And you, human, why do you remain here knowing the weight your presence brings? Zane swallowed hard. Every instinct told him to say something diplomatic, something safe. But he had never been good at either. Because, he said slowly, I love her. The words escaped before he could stop them. They hung in the air, heavier than gravity, brighter than starlight. Karina froze, eyes wide, breath caught. The chamber exploded in shocked whispers. I love her, Zane repeated, louder now, steady. Not because she's a princess or a warrior or the heir to an empire. I love her because she's her. Because she's brave and kind and stronger than anyone I've ever known. And I don't care what species she is or what anyone thinks. Karina stared at him, her lips parting in disbelief, then curving into the softest, most radiant smile he had ever seen. Then I too will speak plainly, she said, lifting her chin. I love him, and I will not deny it. The council was stunned into silence. For a long moment the Empress said nothing. Then at last she rose to her feet. History does not change easily, she said, but perhaps it must. She turned to Karina. Your heart is your own, and if this human truly holds it, then we will learn to accept that. The chamber erupted again, this time in mixed voices, some angry, some hopeful, but Zane barely heard them. Karina had taken his hands, holding them tightly as if afraid he might vanish. You meant it, she whispered, her voice trembling. You truly meant it. He smiled, breathless and dizzy. I did. And I, her voice cracked, and for the first time he saw tears, faint, silver, shimmering, gather in her eyes. I have waited my whole life to hear those words. Later, when the council had ended and the stars stretched endless beyond the palace balcony, they stood together in the cool night air. The city glowed beneath them, and the galaxy spread wide above. I don't know what happens next, Zane said quietly. Neither do I, Karina admitted, but I know I want to find out with you. He smiled and slipped his hand into hers. Then that's enough for me. They stood there a long time, hand in hand, the stars watching silently. For the first time since leaving Earth, Zane felt like he truly belonged, not because of where he was, but because of who was beside him. And somewhere deep inside, he knew their story was far from over. It was only just beginning. The days after the council's decision felt like a dream. Zane had expected anger, protests, maybe even riots, but instead, there was curiosity. Some Kolthari still glared when he walked through the palace halls, but others bowed politely or asked questions about Earth. And always, Karina was there beside him, her hand brushing his as they walked through gardens that floated among the clouds and towers that touched the sky. I never thought I'd see this, Zane said one afternoon, watching two Kolthari children chase a drone through a plaza, a human walking freely on Velira. Karina smiled, her silver eyes soft. It is only the beginning. One day, perhaps, humans and Kolthari will walk every world together. Sounds nice, he said, but right now I'd settle for not tripping over my own boots. She laughed, the sound light and warm. You are adapting faster than most. Even my mother has noticed. Yeah, I've noticed her noticing, Zane replied. She looks at me like she's trying to decide whether to knight me or vaporize me. Do not worry, Karina teased. She does that with everyone. For a time, everything was perfect. They shared quiet breakfasts under twin suns, trained together in the palace's combat halls, where Karina always beat him but pretended not to, and spent long evenings talking about the future. But happiness never lasted long in the stars. It began with whispers, reports of unrest in distant colonies, stolen ships, encrypted transmissions. Then came the sabotage, a communications array destroyed on the outer rim, a diplomatic vessel ambushed near neutral space. And through it all, one name kept surfacing. Varric. Despite his imprisonment, his influence was spreading, and worse, he had allies. "Rebel fleets are forming," said Captain Thalen, Karina's most trusted advisor, during a council meeting. "If they unite under Varric's banner, they could challenge the Dominion itself." "Let them try," one elder scoffed. "We will crush them." "It is not so simple," Karina said, leaning forward. "They are not just soldiers. They are citizens, angry, frightened, misled. If we fight them without understanding why they rise, we risk losing more than a battle. We risk losing our people." Her mother nodded slowly. "Then perhaps we need a symbol, a sign that peace between our worlds is still possible." Her gaze turned to Zane. He blinked. Why are you all looking at me like that?" "Because," Karina said gently, "you are that symbol." "Me, I'm an engineer. I fix things. I don't give speeches." "Then fix this," she said softly, "with me." And so they set out together, not on a warship, but on a diplomatic mission. Their goal: to travel to the rebel-leaning colonies, speak to the people, and prove that unity between species wasn't a fantasy. It was dangerous, it was reckless, and it was exactly the kind of thing Zane knew he'd say yes to. Their first stop was Arales, a mining moon scarred by poverty and rebellion. The people watched with suspicion as the royal shuttle landed, and even more suspicion when a human stepped out beside the princess. "They hate me," Zane whispered as they walked through the marketplace. "They fear you," Karina corrected. "There is a difference." "Not sure I like either." "Then show them you are more than what they fear." They spoke to miners, engineers, shopkeepers, people who had lost faith in the Dominion's promises. Many shouted at Karina, called her a liar. A few even threw stones. Zane's fists clenched, but she held his hand gently. "Do not answer anger with anger," she said. "Answer it with truth." And so he did. He spoke not as a soldier or politician, but as a man who had seen war, who had fought pirates and traitors not because he had to, but because someone he cared about needed him. He told them how he had thought aliens were monsters once, until one of them taught him that they weren't so different after all. By the time he finished, the crowd was quiet. A child, Kolthari, barely 8, walked up to him and offered a small, hand-carved trinket. "For luck," the child said shyly. Zane's throat tightened. "Thank you." When they left Arales, the people didn't throw stones. They waved. The mission continued, from icy moons to crowded trade hubs, from war-scarred worlds to quiet colonies. And everywhere they went, things changed just a little. Fewer doors slammed shut. More voices asked questions. And slowly, impossibly, hope began to grow. But hope was a dangerous thing, and not everyone welcomed it. It happened on their return to Velira. Their ship was gliding through orbit, the planet's glowing oceans below, when alarms screamed. "Missile lock," shouted the pilot, "incoming." Zane barely had time to grab Karina before the first explosion rocked the ship. Systems died. The lights flickered. They were falling. "Brace," Karina yelled, wrapping her arms around him as the shuttle plunged toward the surface. The impact never came. Emergency thrusters fired at the last second, slowing their descent. They crashed hard in a forest clearing miles from the capital, alive but shaken. Zane coughed, unbuckling his harness. "Tell me that was an accident." "It was not," Karina said grimly, scanning the damage. "Someone wants us dead." Night fell as they waited for rescue. They sat together beside the wreckage, a single emergency lamp casting soft light across their faces. Despite the danger, Zane found himself smiling. "Still think this was a good idea?" he asked. Karina leaned her head on his shoulder. "I think it was the only idea worth trying." They were silent for a long time, the stars bright above them. Then she turned, her eyes meeting his. "Zane," she whispered, "if we fail, if this is the end, I need you to know that I would choose this again. I would choose you again." He brushed a strand of silver hair from her face, his chest tight. "Then let's make sure this isn't the end." Somewhere beyond the treetops, ships moved in the darkness. Whether they were friend or foe, neither of them knew. But one thing was certain. The fight wasn't over. And neither was their story. Night clung to the forest like a living thing, shadows shifting between the trees, the silence broken only by the crackle of their emergency beacon. Zane and Karina sat shoulder to shoulder near the wreckage, watching distant lights move across the sky. "Still nothing," Zane muttered, checking the beacon again. "If help doesn't show up soon, I'm starting to think we should walk." Karina shook her head. "We are too far from the nearest settlement. If the rebels are searching for us, moving will make us easier to find." "Great," he sighed. "So our best plan is to sit here and hope they show up before the bad guys do." "Essentially," she said with a faint smile. He laughed softly. "I love how calm you are about possibly dying." "It is easier when the person beside you makes you laugh," she replied. Zane turned his head. Their eyes met, violet and brown, alien and human, and for a heartbeat the danger vanished. It was just them, two people beneath an infinite sky. But the peace didn't last. A rustle came from the trees, then another, and then shapes moved in the darkness, shadows with weapons, advancing silently. "Company," Zane whispered. Karina rose, drawing her blade. "Stay behind me." "Not a chance," he said, lifting the plasma pistol. The fight was quick and brutal. The rebels were skilled, but so were they. Karina moved with the deadly grace of a warrior born, her strikes swift and precise. Zane fought clumsily but fiercely, using tools, rocks, anything he could find to even the odds. But there were too many. They surrounded them, pressing closer with each heartbeat. Then a voice rang out, "Enough." The attackers parted, and from the shadows stepped Varric. Zane's blood ran cold. "You've got to be kidding me." "I told you," Varric sneered. "This story was not over." They were bound and brought deeper into the forest, where a hidden base pulsed with rebel activity. Dozens of fighters watched as Varric paced before them. "You think you've changed anything," he said to Karina. "You think parading this human around will erase centuries of dominance and fear. You are a fool." Karina met his glare without flinching. "You speak of fear, Varric, but it is all you have. You fear change. You fear peace. And most of all, you fear that humans might show us a better way." "Better?" Varric laughed bitterly. "They are fragile, short-lived, weak." "And yet here I am," Zane interrupted. "Still standing, still fighting, and still getting under your skin." Varric's eyes burned. "You will die first, human." "No," Karina said sharply. "You will have to kill me first." Something flickered in Varric's expression, doubt, maybe even guilt, but it was gone in a heartbeat. "Then so be it." The rebels prepared their weapons. Zane's heart pounded. They were trapped, outnumbered, and seconds away from death. He turned to Karina, forcing a smile. "Not the ending I pictured," he said quietly, "but I'm glad you're here." She looked at him, eyes shining with emotion. "If we die together. And if we live," she paused, voice trembling, "then I will never waste another moment pretending I do not love you." He blinked, breath catching. "Say that again." "I love you," she whispered. "I love you with all three hearts, Zane Holt." He laughed softly, even as tears stung his eyes. "And I love you with my one. Guess that makes us even." Before Varric could give the order, the sky exploded with light. Starfighters screamed through the clouds, firing stun bursts into the base. Kolthari soldiers descended from shuttles, surrounding the rebels in moments. Karina's mother stepped out first, cloak flowing behind her. "Enough," the Empress commanded. "This ends now." Variks' followers surrendered one by one. The fight was over. The rebellion was broken. Zane and Karina were free. Days later, back in the capital, the Dominion signed a new charter, one that promised unity, equality, and cooperation between species. Zane stood beside Karina as she addressed her people, her voice strong and clear. "For too long we let fear guide our path," she declared. "But fear builds walls, hope builds bridges, and today we choose hope." The chamber erupted in cheers. Zane smiled, pride swelling in his chest. And when Karina turned to look at him, he knew this wasn't just a speech. It was a beginning. That night, under the silver glow of Valera's twin moons, they walked together through the royal gardens. The war was over. The future stretched before them like an open sky. "So," Zane said softly, "what happens now?" Karina stopped, turning to face him. "Now we build a new peace, a new future, a new life." "Together?" he asked. She smiled, that same smile that had first disarmed him all those weeks ago. "Always." He reached for her hand, and she didn't hesitate. Their fingers intertwined, warm and certain. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if the universe itself were smiling. "Karina," he said quietly. "Yes. When I first met you, I thought you were joking when you said I might be your husband." Her eyes sparkled. "And now?" "Now," he said, pulling her closer, "I'm starting to think you were serious." She laughed that bright, beautiful laugh, and then kissed him beneath the endless sky. And so it was that a human engineer and an alien princess rewrote history, not with armies or empires, but with courage, stubbornness, and a love strong enough to cross the stars. Their journey wasn't over. In truth, it was only just beginning. But whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew one thing for certain. Together, they could face anything.